Hey guys, welcome back to the BloodShot studio. I'm going to take a little break from painting. As you can see, I'm right in the middle of my shark tooth tutorial. A lot of you were throwing up a lot of questions, a lot of hype. That guy right behind me, yes, the wolf helmet. So I'm going to pull him out of his case here, and we're going to chat a little bit about him. He is by far one of my favorite pieces. For one main reason, I learned a lot on this guy. Alright, let me flip you around here. Alright, so a lot of the comments, some of the questions were regarding this 3D effect that I was able to achieve with this wolf. Now guys, this is the toughest thing you'll ever have to do in your life. Is not what I'm going to tell you today. It's actually a really simple process. So in order to get my wolf to look 3D, the first thing I got to do is I got to give him a frame. A hole. Something that he can leap through. Something that is showing there's parts of him disappearing behind, and then there's parts of him that are coming out over top. Now, the parts that you have going behind, blend those back into the black. Blend them into the darkness. Have them disappear. Have them vague. You'll see the detail on my nose is a lot sharper than the detail I have going back here. And that tricks the eye to make it look like it's going farther away, when the reality is it's right on top of that surface. The second trick, this is more important than the border, is drop shadows. So even on my flourish here that I got coming up over top of this border, you'll see I got a little tiny shadow that makes it look like that part is coming over top of this part. This part is going over top of this part. Well, I did the same thing with the wolf. It's a little more subtle, but I darkened this whole area. And it's just to fool the eye to make it look like that nose is putting a shadow onto that part. Again, it's the same surface. There's no difference. But that is how the 3D effect is achieved. Now, when I say I learned a lot on this piece, prior to this piece, all of my airbrush animals, all of my fur, whenever I painted it, I've always used a paintbrush. Now it's given me a nice effect, and it works great when you're working on a tiger that's this size. It works great, but when you're doing something smaller, those paintbrush lines can only get so tiny unless you're going to use a sand. And then, you're dabbing it with paint, coming back doing 7 strokes. Dabbing it with paint, maybe this time you're only getting 5 strokes. Now your brush is clogged. You got to clean off your brush, get some brand new paint, start the process again. It's very time consuming. So what I did with this guy is I started the whole thing, this whole area, with an outline, and I just painted that whole surface white. Then I went over the whole thing with a silver. I wanted a metallic out of this. You don't have to, you could use a gray, but I wanted a metallic. So I painted the whole surface with a silver. Did my gray tones with a stencil, mapped it all out softly, and then went in with my airbrush and started blending out my stencil lines so they're not so hard. They don't have all that crisp edges to them. And then, this is the most important part. This is where I typically go in with my paintbrush and do every individual hair. Dab paint, come back, dab paint. What I did was the scratching method. So being as I have white underneath everything up on top, I took my Xacto knife and I scratched it gently back down to the base. My white. Scratch, 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 scratch. Now, not only is this a little more precise, when you're working with a paintbrush, your paintbrush is going to bend. So when you're on that surface, you got to be floating above that surface. You can't put too much pressure on that brush or it's going to bend. It's going to cause some some fan effect, and unless that's what you're going for, in fur, it's not what I want. With my Xacto knife, I can put about as much pressure as I'd put on a pencil. And I can just sit there and I can scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch and scratch. And you know what? I'll go back in and I'll use my gray tones and I'll blend out some of them so they look darker. And I'll scratch again. And I'll blend it out and I'll scratch it again. And now your fur starts to look super deep. Like you got some fur underneath there. You got some fur sticking up. Pay attention to your muscles whenever you're doing a wolf or any animal with fur. I like to have reference in front of me. It's always easier to use a picture than to try to make up the muscle structure in your brain. And just watch the way the hair flows off, because it always goes in different directions. But that's how I achieved this guy. His eyes, again, I used a metallic and the blue just to make that pop and sing. Even for the little highlights on the nose, I scratched those down. All my whiskers scratched. Highlights in the mouth, a little bit of drool coming off his bottom lip, all scratched. Now, opposite effect. This was all done with the airbrush, no paintbrush, no scratching, but I wanted this to be soft. This is even further away in the background, so where I'm softening up these lines and these furs and all the things that's going on in that area, I wanted everything back here to be soft as well. I've got a light source coming in, fighting through some trees, getting blocked by other trees, and that's just a matter of using stencils, man. When I got all my trees mapped out, and then I'll just start putting my light, doing a glow. I'll bring it down. I'll use some sort of a straight edge. Shameless self-promotion. And then just bring my white right to there and stop it. And I did that a few times, and then brought some rays of light over top of where I stopped it. And that just brings your forest to have a really deep look. Make sure that it's not consistent in the back. I didn't want a fade of light just going from light to dark. I got some areas that are lighter, some areas that are darker, and everything in between. And that just shows that the light is bouncing off the trees. It's shimmering in the night. It's got surfaces that it's collecting on. So the lighting is pretty important when you're doing something like that. Again, I just mapped out a simple graphic. The only reason why I had this was to give that a border. Adds to the 3D effect to have this on top of this guy on top of this. It just keeps bringing the layers to make it look deeper and deeper and deeper, even though it's all done on one surface. I've dubbed it the Renegade Lone Wolf. But there she is. This is a project I took on for myself. Nobody commissioned me to do it. I had some downtime last year. And I figured I got so many of these helmets and gas tanks I've been collecting over the years, and I wanted to get some paint on. It's been an idea that I've had blossoming. I love the wolf. He is my spirit animal, in case you can't tell. So it just made sense. The blues, I kept all my tones. Even in my wolf, I've got a lot of blue coming in the edges. Kept everything, my forest, blues, purples. Kept everything in the blue tones to keep it all monochrome. Give it a nice classy feel. And everything just sinks in and blends. And yeah, that's my baby. Protects my noggin. No, I don't use this. It's too pretty. And there you have it. The Renegade Lone Wolf. Alright guys, if there's something I didn't cover, if you have any questions, if there's something you're just dying to know, hit me up in the comments and I'll get back to you. If there's other things in the studio of BloodShot that you want to know about, let me know and we can add those to the list. That's it, just a short little video, just a little insight on the wolf that everybody seems to love. He's mine, you can't have him. Thanks for following along. If you like this video, tell your friends, share along, like, follow, subscribe. Till next time, Ryan, A.K.A. BloodShot Airbrushing. Cheers. So here's another helmet commissioned that I did where I achieved the same effect, using the border and the drop shadows to get that 3D jumping off the helmet. This one, however, was achieved with a paintbrush rather than the scratch effect. And for your viewing pleasure, here's the helmet before clear coats. And as always, guys, thanks for stopping by the BloodShot studio. It's appreciated. Much love.